What's up, everybody out there? What an incredible week that we've had. Don't know if you guys saw the Grammys last night. That took place. I thought the social justice performance from Baby, what's his name? Lil Baby was pretty cool. He did a reenactment of the Rayshard Brooks shooting. So I thought that was pretty powerful. But moving on to the social justice blog today. How's everybody doing?
Good.
Doing good. It's Monday. It's been a lot going on. I think that in talking to a lot of activists, a lot of teachers, Black people are spent. Like, we're already burnt out from having to do so much and fighting on every end and still having, a lot of the same challenges, being presented before us. And it's, we're expected every day to show up to work and, do this and, be happy. And sometimes you just get tired of like putting on this show. It's like, okay, it is what it is, right? So thankful to be alive, but I do realize that Black people tired, and I feel that 100%.
Man, let me get in on that, bro. Like, I think one of the things backstage I was talking about how I'm just like exhausted, and y'all know, it doesn't change from year to year. When the weather gets nice, things start happening, particularly in Black communities. So we saw an uptick in shootings this weekend in Chicago. We had close to 40 people shot. One particular incident, somebody had like a makeshift club or whatever, and somebody opened fire in this party where 15 people got shot. 2 of the people were killed, right? Wow. And it's just frustrating because, and then on top of that, somebody at the party, I think the DJ went live, from the event, and you saw one of the people who died just laying there on the floor. So it's a couple of different dynamics where, I think we need to have a real conversation about why we're advocating for reparations and for rights for Black people, about also how to hold our people accountable. Right. Because the foolery and terrorism in our own neighborhoods is just, it has to stop.
No, that's powerful. Yeah, that's what's happening.
Yeah, we got to talk about this display, this traumatic display of Black bodies lying dead on social media. It's the same display that, it was back in the day when they used to hang our bodies from trees and people would just walk past it like it was normal. And that's what's happening on social media, is that we're posting these videos of Black bodies, brutalized Black bodies, and we're walking past it, or we're viewing this stuff like it's normal and not talking about the internal trauma that is causing us and causing our community. So that stuff has me like stressed out. And like what Jason said, like, we as activists get tired because we're constantly fighting these battles on every front. So I'm just like drained today from that. I just want to share that piece with y'all, so I don't know if the same thing's happening where y'all are, but it's real here as always.
Right.
Yeah, it's definitely real here in Atlanta too. I definitely feel you.
So today, y'all, we have 3 very powerful guests. You may have seen them on social media. You might have seen them in the news. There's even a movie that one of them is in. And I wouldn't be surprised if there are a few more movies that are made. They have celebrity power behind their movements. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce y'all to the 3 panelists today. We have Antoinette Jones from Oklahoma City and Cece Jones Davis. They are a part of the Justice for Julius Jones Campaign. And then we also have Norman Propst. I don't know. Did I pronounce that name correctly? Norman?
Yes, you did.
All right, cool. I had to say it really fast. I'm like, let me just say it fast. Maybe he won't know that I messed his name up. But yes, with the Innocence Project, is that what you're with?
Oh, yes, Illinois Innocent Project. I'm with Alliance for Black Lives.
Alliance for Black Lives. So Antoinette and Cece Jones Davis, we'll go ahead and we'll start with y'all. Can y'all just tell us a little bit about the Justice for Julius Jones campaign?
Brother Neil. Yes. We kind of started here. So I did want to say just this shout out to herself, Beyonce, who is the most awarded Black female in the Grammy institution. I don't really get with that. However, I do want to celebrate that accomplishment. I know a lot of people were happy about that, and talking up the impact that Black women have had in the industry, from Aretha Franklin to Whitney Houston to Beyonce. And, I just wanted to celebrate that, to get people a little bit more re-energized as we go into a powerful yet heavy conversation. All right, go ahead, brother.
All right, so Antoinette, Cece Jones, y'all have the floor.
Okay, you want to go first or you want me to go first?
Feel free, go right ahead.
So my name is Antoinette Jones. I am the sister of Julius Darius Jones. Right now, we're focused on fighting for his life. He's on death row here in Oklahoma. So he's been on death row for about over 20 years. So Miss Cece, I'll introduce Miss Cece. Miss Cece is a pastor. She's an activist. She is a singer, songwriter. She is, I don't know what she can't do, but she heard about Julius's documentary that Mr. Nehemiah was talking about. And so Viola Davis and her husband, Julius Tenen, got together and they did a documentary called The Last Defense. And then Julius was in the second episode, the second phase of the documentary, The Last Defense. So she's seen, Cece seen the documentary, and after she seen it, she just, like she said, she couldn't go to sleep at night, and so she started this Justice for Julius campaign, which is the hashtag Justice for Julius, and I'll let her talk about a little bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Good afternoon, folks. Thank you so much for having us on. I saw The Last Offense, which Antoinette just referenced, in August of 2018, about a young man named Julius Jones on death row in Oklahoma. There's so many issues to this man's case that were highlighted in The Last Offense. And at the time I was living in Oklahoma, and I just, it was just unreal to me. And I felt like, as a taxpayer, as a Black woman, as a person of faith, as a human, I just wasn't going to be able to not do something. I didn't have a background or anything in criminal justice, but I just connected with Antoinette and her family, who's been through hell, literally hell, for over 20 years now, and some other folks in the community. And we, for the last, Nehemiah knows, for the last few years have just been doing any and everything that we can to, number one, highlight and amplify Julius Jones' situation in Oklahoma, and then two, to figure out what could be done. Of course, we approached the DA first about it, and he was not amenable at all to helping Julius Jones. And so, Julius is out of court. And so his last opportunity of life is with the Pardon and Parole Board and the governor. And so it has been a really, really long road. And I don't know how in-depth you guys want us to go, but people can visit justiceforjulius.com to learn about his case, to watch The Last Offense. But his case was flawed with racial bias. One of the jurors on the trial said, let's just take this N-word to the back of the court and shoot him and get it over with. And he remained with the jury and voted, and also was there to vote for death. He did not have an effective public defense at all. Once the prosecution rested, his team literally stood up and said, "We rest," and sat down. They did not present an alibi. They did not present a witness. They did not cross-examine thoroughly the co-defendant who actually fit the description. Along with that, there was a photo of Julius that was taken 9 days before the crime that would have shown he didn't fit the description of the shooter, of who this was a hijacking, a carjacking gone wrong. And Julius didn't even fit the description. And if that photo had been presented in court from his attorneys, everybody in the world could have seen that. But that photo did not fit the court. Yeah.
And can you tell them specifically why Julius did not fit the description? Because I think that's very important.
Yeah. So the eyewitness said that it was an African-American man with a bandana, with like a skull cap, a bandana across the face. and about half an inch to an inch of hair hanging from underneath the cap. And Julius Jones had a very tight, like seizure, had a tight fade, basically. 9 days before the crime and 3 days after, he had that same haircut, which is well documented. And so he didn't have enough hair to stick out from underneath the cap. But his co-defendant, Christopher Jordan, did. He had three, when he was picked up for the crime, 3 braids. Now, Christopher took a deal from the DA to testify against Julius. And ever since, he spent some time in order to not get the death penalty. He took a deal. He spent some time in prison and confessed to several people that and bragged that he was the actual killer. One person just more recently came forward after they heard about Julius's story and could put the pieces together. One of the people who used to work with Christopher Jordan in prison came forward to say, yeah, he talked about being the killer. And, the DA and the AG have been fighting us very hard to make sure that Julius pays for a crime that he didn't even commit so that they can save face. We're in a really crucial time because last week, I think it was actually last Monday, a week ago, the Pardon and Parole Board voted 3-1 to give Julius a commutation hearing, which is awesome. And since then, the district attorney has filed suit against the Pardon and Parole Board, has filed suit against the governor. It is crazy. It is insane. And so we're hoping that Julius will get his commutation hearing sooner than later. That's definitely not the will of the DA. They don't want him to have a commutation hearing at all, but we're hoping that he'll get it over the summertime. I'm going to stop there and let you all ask questions because I really could go on and on about this.
Yeah, that was powerful and also a lot. I have like 5,000 questions because we have so many families that are experiencing this. So I would start with this. What can be done to help bring more awareness to Julius's case, and even for maybe others who are in similar situations that don't even have a foundation or activists or advocates, working on their behalf? So that's my first thought. What can we do?
I'll suggest some things, and then Antoinette, if there's anything that I missed, you feel free to throw it in here. First of all, we have been really fortunate for a number of reasons, but there has to be an infrastructure in place to dismantle, to get something as heavy as a death penalty off of one human being. It has to be a very coordinated, sophisticated effort to do that. And that's what we've built. We've had to build a campaign, just like somebody would be campaigning for a political office. I mean, we've had to put all of those pieces in place so that we could try to lift this thing off of Julius Jones, this injustice off of him. Earlier on, we started a petition, a change.org petition. And because we were able to get the eyes of Kim Kardashian and some other high profile individuals, that petition really grew. And we were able to deliver that petition to the Pardon and Parole Board a few weeks ago with 6.2 million signatures on it.
Can you say that one more time really, really loud so folks can just really hear how many people actually signed?
Yeah, 6.2 million people signed the petition to get Julius Jones off of death row in Oklahoma. It takes a lot of social media. I think social media is extremely important to help people understand what is going on in cases like this. And it takes influencers where you are and outside of where you are, platforms where you are, local news, and then platforms outside of where you are to amplify to the greatest degree what is going on in a situation like this. And I'll say again, I feel like we've been really, really fortunate that we've had some really smart people, some really well-known people to take deep, genuine interest in Julius Jones and to bring his case to the forefront. And the bottom line is that it really takes a group of people who are not going to let it go. You know, like I do this work day in and day out, along with Antoinette and some others. We won't let it, we're not going to let it go. And for the last 3 years, that's been our resolve. And that's the kind of dedication that it takes to even move the needle a little bit on something like this. Antoinette, did I miss anything?
No, ma'am, you did not. Well, you know what? So like she was saying about the community, it definitely takes the community. So your leaders in the community, as far as your legislators, your people that are running for different positions, definitely need to talk to them. You need to talk to your pastors, your ministers, your teachers, school teachers. I mean, you name it. You need to talk to the whole community. And what we're missing, and I know it's because it's COVID, but what we're missing is a lot of community meetings that we used to have. Like we need even more town hall meetings and things like that. So definitely try to give voice to those that you're fighting for. There are different ways to give voice to those that need counsel. So if you need a lawyer, definitely seek out lawyers. Find out what languages you need to use when you're trying to sign. I mean, when you're trying to put in petitions for your loved ones. That's important too, to know the law of the language law. That's very important because a lot of us get just brushed through the system like that because we don't know different laws that need to be implemented and broadcast about. So I don't want to ramble on, but you definitely need the support of your community. And just having the support of Nehemiah and his community, and like we just connecting, man, it's beautiful. God is good.
Well, I wanna take a second and fold Norman into the conversation because I imagine that he's seen some similar cases and doing work along the same line. So Norman, if you could tell us tell us your story about your work and the different resources and supports that you're using to do to free Black people.
Oh, okay. Thank you guys for having me also. Yeah, something took place in 1990 when I was 19 years of age. Chicago police accused me of a crime that I haven't committed. It was strong armed robbery. They came to my mother's apartment and say that I robbed an 80-year-old Philippine guy. So when they came to the apartment, they had the Philippine grandson screaming and saying, "You robbed my grandfather." So I'm telling them that I haven't left the house. I've been in the house all day. So they came to my mother's doors inside the apartment and looked around. And I guess the police officer opened the back door. They said, "Where the other guy at who robbed the 80-year-old man?" I said, "What other guy? It's just me in the apartment." And I said, "Why is my mother's back door is open?" So next thing I know, they put the handcuff on me and took me downstairs. I seen a wallet on the first floor. And my mother building, the door is not secure. Anybody could come in the building. So my neighbors, they was outside, mostly women. And so my neighbor said, "What are y'all doing to him? He been in the house all day. He don't do no crime. His mother feed people in the community." And they called them the B words. The police said, "You guys keep talking. I'm gonna take all you beats to the jail." So they put me in a police squad car. Two white officers asked me, "Anybody ever call you the N-word?" So I knew not to say anything. So they took me to the police station and handcuffed me to the wall for 4 hours. They put chains on my ankle. It was a black police officer. She walked past. She said, "I know you didn't do that crime. I know you didn't do that crime." So her little 12-year-old son was waiting for her to get off of work in the police station. So he came in there and he told me that don't say nothing to the police. My mother said, "Don't talk." The older guy was inside the police station laughing with the police officer. The police officers told me that the older guy died from the robbery. I better admit that I robbed him or they're gonna charge me with murder. So I listened to that young guy. I didn't say nothing to the police officers. So after he left off, they came in there and started intimidating me for over 12 hours. I was intimidated. So so my family, I ain't heard from my family for a couple of days. They transferred me to Cook County Jail, the biggest jail in Chicago. So I was locked up for 3 to 4 hours. I mean 3 to 4 months. I'm sorry, 3 to 4 months in jail. So I noticed that some gang members, they were questioning me about what happened. And so, I told them I ain't do nothing, this and that, because they were gonna harm me. Because if you hurt an elderly person, the gang member was trying to, do something to you. So I remember one of the head leaders in the jail, he was like, they sent alert in the jail telling us not to mess with you. You're a good person. The whole community backing me up saying I ain't do the crime, this and that. So they didn't touch me. So I noticed my mother came in to see me like a couple of days later. When I got there, when she was sitting behind the glass window, I was walking up to the glass window. I seen her talking to some of the inmates. So, it just hurt me that my mother seen me in an orange outfit, a crime that I never did. So she had tears coming down her face. And when she left out, the inmates told me, your mother's a good mom. She told that you didn't do the crime. You got a good mom because most mothers, don't come up to see us and this and that. So I like, yeah, she's a good mom. She always helping people out. So I went back into the jail, stayed there for 3 or 4 months. Then they took me and put me on house arrest for a whole year. I was on house arrest for a whole year. I couldn't leave out. So next thing I know, right before the year, they took me on. The lawyers told me to come to the courthouse. Me and my mother, they have a plea deal for me. They told me if I take 4 year probation, they are like, I have to do 4 year probation, or they gonna go to trial and I can get up to 15 years in prison. So my mother been going through a lot when I was in jail. She had a heart attack. My mother was going through depression because a couple years before I got accused of the crime, my brother committed suicide for depression and stuff. So I look at my mother's face and tears coming down her face. I didn't want her to go through that. So I took the plea deal for 4 years because I knew the justice system wouldn't be on my side. I knew how the system was. So I didn't want my mother to be hurt. So I took the 4 year probation. So after I was on probation, got for probation for 4 years, I found me a job in Chicago, First Bank of Chicago. And I was there for about right before 90 days. They walked me out and said, you have a felony on your record. You can no longer work at the First Bank of Chicago. I have to get a sponge for me to come back to work. So my supervisor manager, they had told me, they said, every time we hire any Black young man from the poor community or the urban community, they always have to let them go because they have felony charges on them. So I tried my best to get a sponge. I went everywhere. I went to the Daily Center where they hold the criminal records for expungement. So I went there. They told me I couldn't get a sponge because I have a felony. I went to the police headquarters and tried to talk to them. They wouldn't even talk to me. They said, "Oh, you're a criminal. Get out of here." So for 30 years, I've been fighting for a pardon. And I came to Atlanta in 1997 because it was another crime they put on me in Chicago. They said I had stole a $12 book, a bookstore that I was working for. An employee had left her book there, and we was taught that customers always right. Checking my coworker, they said, yeah, she paid for that book. So the loss prevention guy came in there, took me to the office, and they had the police waiting there, handcuffed me, took me out the air, walked me through the airport and handcuffed. It took me to jail,
Hmm.
and then they had me in there for 24 hours. Uh, then they gave me a fan to get out of jail, so they released me after 24 hours. So that record followed me. I went to court. The young lady who worked for the airline went, and she had a lawyer. I couldn't afford a lawyer. So the judge told the loss prevention guy, I can't believe you had him come in here and lock him up for a $12 book, a bookstore that he worked for. And prior
Wow.
to that, my manager at the bookstore, she quit. She said he's not that type of person. He didn't do it. My coworker said he didn't do that. She did pay for the book. And so she resigned. My manager resigned. The judge gave me 6 months supervision. He said, I'm gonna just give you 6 month supervision, and they dropped her charges or anything. The young lady worked for the airline. She got her job back. Uh, so I had that on my record. So I was trying to get that expunged. I had reached out to my little young cousin. He said, "Oh, contact the Cabrini Legal Aid in Chicago, and they could seal your record." So I went to Chicago. I flew to Chicago and talked to the Cabrini Green Legal Aid people, and they said, "Well, we could seal your record." Uh, but nobody could bring it up or anything, this and that. So I told them I've been working with Illinois Innocent Project. So they said it's best for you to deal with them, because if we seal your record, if they find for you a clemency, they won't be able to get your record from the police department. So when I had talked to John Hanlon, the director of Illinois Innocent Project, um, he told me they usually don't take people cases who are already off, living in, not in the system, or I mean, not in prison, this and that. He said, I'll be the first one. He said, I believe you. I'm gonna fight hard to get you a pardon. I'm gonna do my best. He came to Atlanta. They was having a convention for Innocent Project. So I talked to him. He had tears coming down his face. He said, your story is amazing. He said, I'm gonna work with you. We're gonna fight hard to get you a pardon. So
let me pause you. Let me pause you right there, Norman, because before we get too far away from like the conversation, I want to, I want us to talk about or dig into these different layers. Like when you were talking about how you were set up, and then you guys were talking about how Julius was set up. This is bringing up a number of different things in my mind. And when we talk about how, first of all, a lot of Black families and parents, and even those who are unfairly targeted, don't know their rights, right? Because we saw the same thing that happened with Norman. We saw the same thing that happened with Julius. We saw the same thing that happened with Khalid Browder with the Central Park Five. So many other Black and brown, men and women that were brought into police stations for crimes they didn't commit, intimidated by police, put in jail. Some of them ultimately finding out that the person that actually committed the crime was in jail with them. And so how are we combating all these layers where we're unfamiliar with our rights and how to go into police stations or intimidation situations and defend ourselves, and then fight for our rights not to be thrown into the mass incarceration system with deals that are ultimately gonna, affect us negatively. Like, how do we unpack all of that, and how do we get that education to our communities?
That's good.
What I did is, when I left Chicago, 1996, I joined an organization, National Action Network, Reverend Ab Sharpton. So I knew in my heart that I had to, to help. I mean, God sent me out to do a mission for him. So I was just getting involved in the community. And I formed up the Black Lives Matter Atlanta chapter. So I said, I'm not gonna go and pay back the police. I want to help my community so next people won't have to go through this. So Well, I tell people, get involved, talk to your legislator so they can pass these bills. Just do the work in the community and tell people your story. Because people didn't know my story. Once I started doing activists and organizing work, people started listening to me like, we gotta help you. And it's that what happened. Alliance for Black Lives, they came on board. They went to the Illinois prison review hearing for me. And Dr. Therese Johnson, she an educator. She spoke up at the hearing. I had people who wrote letters, like State Representative Renita Shannon, Rashad Ritchie with 1380 WAOK. He a political analyst. He wrote a letter. March for Our Lives Youth. They wrote letters. So I had people to get involved and just write to the prison review board, talking to the legislature. They got on board with me because they knew me because I was doing the work in the community. If you do the work in the community and you show love for your people, they'll get out there and help you. You just gotta get out there and talk to people.
That's
and that's
good.
what I'm doing.
So it took all of that energy from the community to help clear your name.
Yeah, they was on board. They play a big part, even doing Change.org, they did a petition draft for me, and that played a part. So the community put so much effort into even going on the news and stuff, talking to the media about my what happened to me.
Did you receive pushback from the courts at all during the beginning stages, or police officers or DAs, or?
It was so hard to get in touch because I've been fighting for this. Happened 30 years ago. So the judge who did that to me, he's no longer living. Back then in Chicago, they was like putting so many crimes on young black boys in the poor community, crimes that they couldn't solve. And so some of the DAs, they no longer DAs anymore. So reach out to the police department. They didn't want to hear me. They didn't believe me. So I just kept like, I'm gonna find some way. I Google everything. I did a lot of Google, bring up clemency, what to do, find for a clemency, this and that. But Illinois Innocent Project, they did the most of the work. They did the most of the work fighting for my part. And then also a mentor, USAW, with the Exonerated Five, he mentored me, told me keep fighting, don't give up. And he was putting the small story out there also, but he mentored me a lot also.
So I wanna ask Antoinette and Cece about the importance around the education for like victims advocacy. Again, when we're sending families, when our kids are being snatched off the streets and they're being questioned by police officers. I know Zakia, who's who's my colleague. She talked about how a 6-year-old in Maryland was interrogated without his parent by police. And so how important is it, and what resources are available, education is available, what should be available for families to be aware of their rights when they're being intimidated and interrogated by police?
Antoinette, did you want to say something?
I do not know the resources that you're talking about, because we don't really have a lot of those resources. So what I will say is it starts with you. Like basically, our program director, Cece Jones Davis, she started screenings to kind of like, because there were so many people, even my cousins, even like my family members, there were relatives that did not know any of Julius's key points. They didn't know whether he was alive or dead or overseas. They didn't know if he, it was like amazing and also sad, but also it was a reason why she had this put up, like why God chose her and why she started doing screenings. Not only did she start doing screenings, but with those screenings, it basically gave the information to the community, and they themselves were able to see, oh, there's a great injustice with what's going on just with the first episode.
Right.
So along with the screening, she also did panel discussions where afterwards We had key people like Julius's best friend, Jimmy Lawson. We had key people like Julius's lawyers, Dale Bache and Amanda Bass, that came and kind of spoke. And then we had like professionals like Dr. Susan Sharp Crow. We also had Dr. Carlos Hill from the University of Oklahoma. So we had different key people. And not only did we have different key people, but we were able to talk to one of Julius's second lawyers, are part of that staff, which was Miss Robin Bruno. And that kind of really hit home with a lot of people, for her to come forward and say, you know, yes, we didn't know, we were inexperienced, you know, this is what was going on. So it definitely takes like I said, it takes a community, it takes us standing up, talking. But with that documentary, I used to work at a recreational facility. I used to work for the city, and just with that first episode, a lot of people did not realize that was me talking in a documentary. So there were a great deal of kids that expressed, man, I have a cousin that's locked up. I have a dad that's locked up. How do I become a lawyer? I want to be a lawyer for people like your brother, because it doesn't seem like they were doing their job, you know, things like that. And that brought communication. That brought different ways that we started trying to have professionals come up to the facility. But I ended up not working there anymore. But it definitely starts with it starts with you. It starts with you know, seeing that a lot of people are not informed about, like you said, about our rights and things like that. So we, even in the past, when I worked at the recreational center, we had police officers come and talk to the kids, and just their mannerisms when speaking to a majority audience of Black kids, and maybe like 1 or 2%, you know, Spanish or white. There was a great difference with body mannerisms. And a lot of those kids pointed out that, you know, well, why do you touch your gun all the time when you're talking to us? And what the police officer even admitted, I didn't even notice that I was doing that. And so it also brings, when you bring the police into the facility to come talk, the older kids, just on insight, I mean, just seeing the police, they automatically go the opposite way. So how do you talk to kids that automatically know, I don't want to talk to the police because they have been harassed by the police? Just in my community, I don't know about anybody else's community, but growing up, witnessing, you know, them stopping Black boys and telling them to lay on the ground, they got a heavy backpack, or telling them to get up against the fence, and we just walking home from school.
Right.
Those are things that we need to deal with. But how do we deal with that? You know, like that's very hard, because you have people, you have leaders in our community, but it's kind of like we don't have that connection to where we need to do this program, and we need to set up this language so that we can get things orchestrated. So it starts with all of us.
Yeah. And go ahead.
Sorry, can I just add, and Antoinette spoke so eloquently. Thank you, Antoinette. I would just piggyback and, you know, second what she says in terms of how important education is. And the fact that today we cannot point to real resources, it lets you know that there is a lack thereof, right? What I would add is the importance of platforms like you all's platform. Every grassroots platform is extremely important in raising awareness about what is actually going on, because it's really the people here on the ground level that need to be educated about, you know, the criminal justice system, how often it gets it wrong. In a place like Oklahoma, the average Oklahoman is very oblivious to how broken the system is, not just around the country, not just, you know, from a story that you see over there on the news over there, but a story right here in the state, right? People think that the criminal justice system gets it right all the time. And one of our jobs in this campaign has been to say and to highlight, actually, it doesn't get it right all the time. And here is a tragic example of that, and what happened to Julius Jones, right? people don't know, for example, that Oklahoma has a very high number of exonerations. People don't know that at least 10 people have been exonerated from Oklahoma's death row. Just death row, 10 people since the 1970s. And I don't know about others, but that's a really high number to me when you're talking about somebody being this close to dying by the state for something they didn't do.
Right.
So, you know, is those kinds, that kind of information that the average person doesn't know. And I really believe that grassroots efforts, just like this one, just like you all's platforms, is the way to make sure that the information spreads. I know it's slow, but it's still the most important element in my mind. And that's why I held the screenings in the community for the last defense. When the last defense came out, I realized how many people did not know, how many people did not see Julius Jones' story. And here we are living in Oklahoma. How is that possible or acceptable? And so we held, you know, screenings for people to see with their own eyes and then have conversations. You know, those kind of grassroots efforts is really what I think makes the difference long term.
Right. And if I can just add to what Cece is saying, like you have to, I feel like you have to make it palatable, right? You have to feed it to the people in a way that is easy for them. Because a lot of folks don't have access. A lot of folks don't have access to just, you know, the level of education that it would take for someone to sit down and read through all of these articles and documents, right, that have been filed by folks who are petitioning their innocence, right? And so one of the things that the Black Wall Street Times did, I think it was like last year or 2 years ago, is we actually did a video of the testimony that Julius never had a chance to give. And it's, you know, we had 10 different brothers from our community like read his statement, and it was really powerful. Really powerful. So you didn't have to sit down and read it yourself. You know, we were essentially the voice of Julius Jones. Yeah. I have to say that was like one of the most honorable and powerful things I've ever done in my entire life. So thank you for letting me, you know, letting us be his voice.
Yeah, that was incredible, actually. And we were able to post that on social media, and you know, that was not only a way to raise awareness, but that was also to get the buy-in of leaders throughout Oklahoma. Those people that Nehemiah asked to, you know, participate and to do that reading, you know, they've been with us ever since, you know, and it's because they've had buy-in to the issue. And that's what you do. You give people as many opportunities as possible to be a part of something, so that they can then have buy-in and help to take the message forward. So thank you, Nehemiah.
Cece, let me jump back to something you said earlier, right? One of the things was that the criminal justice system doesn't always get it right. But I'm wondering, you know, in terms of Black people, like how often does it get it right? Because when we talk about rehabilitation, how often does that happen? Like rarely, number one. That's why when we talk about another thing, when we talk about resources available, like we have, I guess, aftercare or after resources and expungement and, you know, trying to get people removed from death row, like what Brian Stevenson is doing, but we need those preventative resources too, right? So it's like when we talk about what's needed as far as grassroots conversations and efforts and stuff, like that's definitely part of, but we need like concrete, you know, supports and resources so that we won't land people in this system that has no, that's just not trying to rehabilitate them. But one of the biggest things, Neo, you said something about making the information available, accessible, and palatable. It goes back to this concept that mass incarceration in the Black community has been normalized, because how many of us, you know, have had conversations with our family like, oh yeah, such and such got locked up, they'll be out in a little bit, and it's nothing. And so that's why we think about how we don't know about Julius Jones and the other Julius Joneses out there in the world, is because this industry has been, or this oppression has been so normalized in our community as a capitalistic tactic by America to, again, make that money on our backs and criminalize us when they don't want to do the work to find out who the actual criminals are. And so those are just a few points that I want to make, like listening to what you guys are saying, and really, you know, to let everybody know again, to share this conversation, share this episode, because this is important. We're talking about that awareness and that knowledge and just having conversations about what's happening, period, and how many Black people are going to jail unfairly, unjustly, and spending more time in there than they need to, or that they probably shouldn't even be in there. Like, we're talking about this and we need to have these conversations. So I just want to throw that stuff out there. Jay, you want to say something?
Yeah, I have a lot of questions. I know we are 45 into the hour. Atlanta is going to have Norman on this evening, where we're going to focus on specifically the incarceration of Black people unjustly in the criminal justice system, and also the role that the school to prison pipeline plays around that. So I'll save those questions until that time. However, I do want to ask everyone, you know, are there social justice campaigns that are focusing on mass incarceration, and how are we connecting people to these movements? You know, I've seen a lot of action here in Georgia around, you know, closing jails, repurposing them, a lot around expungement, and this is a legislative, you know, season right now. There are a lot of major elections locally that are going to be happening, and so I wanted to just lift up social justice campaigns. And also, are there any candidates who are running locally that are talking about expungement and other support programs that will help families that are battling the system in regards to their loved ones who are falsely accused?
Well, I'll add this, that I do know in Oklahoma, there is a lot of legislation being considered right now in regard to criminal justice, because at this point, a lot of people realize that we've got a major problem in Oklahoma. Oklahoma ranks, you know, one of the highest incarcerators, and not just in the country, but in the world, particularly of women. And so they realize they've got a huge problem. And so there's legislation presented right now, but one that I'm particularly interested in is legislation that is being considered for a criminal integrity unit, which would take into consideration the processes that cases have been through, and anything that would have fell through the cracks through in the process of the court system. This would be, I would imagine, post-conviction, but that would be extremely important, right? In a state where you have a lot of exonerations, a lot of people who are convicted and are spending time for things they're not doing. So to have an office in place that specifically looks at these kinds of cases and tries to get clarity and real justice well before, you know, somebody is actually executed. Those are the kinds of things that are really, really important to me. And there are so many movements across the country, obviously with Until Freedom and all of the others that we see out here that are addressing mass incarceration, police brutality, death penalty, etc. And I'm really happy to be living in this time. Sorry that we have to deal with this, but happy that there are people that are dealing with this.
That's good.
So Norman, what organizations are you involved with now, and what are y'all doing to spread awareness of how to combat injustices?
Yeah, so I'm with Alliance for Black Lives. I'm one of the co-founders with two other ladies who's the co-founder. What we doing is like working with legislators, like discrimination of marijuana, because so many Black young youth are being locked up and also killed when the police pull them over and searching the car for drugs, and they say they smell drugs in the car or something. And then, you know, in a fatality, the youth is dead. So we working on, like, with different legislators to pass some of the bills. Like Renita Shannon, she been working on like ending mass incarcerations in school prison pipeline, not having police in schools, this and that. We have to get more counselors in school instead of the police officers. So we've been doing lots of work like that. talking to our legislators and making sure we get the right legislators placed in office, because some of the legislators, um, they just hush hush. They making money off of private prison pipeline. So we got to make sure we get the right ones in office and get bills passed to help, people like myself. So that's what we've been doing, working with the legislators.
That's good. I know I'm noticing a trend here. A lot of Black women are lifting their voices for these movements. They're the witnesses. They've been disregarded. They've been overlooked. And I messaged, in watching the show, also from my phone and being on it, I messaged, where are the brothers uplifting these movements? And then I guess as I think about it, they're probably in situations like Dre and situations like Julius, where they've been falsely accused and pushed into a system that unfortunately we're still fighting to get many people out. So I'll center and frame my question around this. What can we do to support more Black women who are on the outside carrying this heavy lift, which is traumatic, having your loved ones that are in prison unjustly, having to fight the power on every other realm, right? Because we aren't just fighting the power against mass incarceration. What can we do to better support Black women who are leading these movements and not even dealing with, if I can be very honest, carrying a lot of this trauma of our Black families and including those who are incarcerated? What can we do to support them?
I love that question. So I'll take a stab at that. Thank you for asking that, because I don't know that many people realize that Black women have always been at the foundation of movement, whether they have been visible or not. Right now, in recent time, Black women, we are at the forefront, and I want to first highlight how we are in terms of Antoinette Jones. She is, I might be the backbone of this campaign, but she's the backbone of her family. It's Black women who are keeping their families together. Literally, this woman is holding on to Julius and holding on to her other family members like her life depends on it. It has been doing that for the last 20 years. So the pressure and the trauma that Black women are experiencing because of injustice within their families, it's more than I can say. But what can we do to support Black women who are at the forefront of movements? We need to affirm them, first of all. Black women are not getting enough thank you. Black women are not getting enough you can do it, keep going. Black women are not getting enough acknowledgement for the blood, work, sweat, tears they put into efforts like this all over the country and all over the world, women of color. Black women need funding. Black women need organizations to come alongside and help build infrastructure and help to build teams around them that can distribute the work, disseminate the work among other people, so that we're not dying of heart attacks earlier than we should. So that we're not, so that we're not, going crazy, because this kind of trauma can drive somebody.
It's overwhelming.
Edge, right? It's very overwhelming. Black women doing this kind of work need therapy, need therapy resources, need on a sliding scale or free, pro bono or something. But we need spaces where we can go in and kind of take the load off. And Black women and their families, like Antoinette and her mother, need the same. This is very, as a faith person, I say, we are in the valley of the shadow of death. And being this close to in proximity in this way is very traumatizing for everybody involved. And so I'll stop there, but I just appreciate you raising the question, what can we do for Black women? Because a lot of people don't even notice that Black women are always at the forefront of these kinds of things.
Yeah. And Dre, I would love to hear from you as well, having a mother that you know, like Antoinette and her family were on the outside, you know, lifting and carrying, you know, the message, and you survived it, brother. You actually, you know, I'm trying to hold it together because this is a really heavy conversation. I don't think that in the Black community we realize the trauma of simply walking out of your house and being Black and then being falsely accused, and serving time in a prison where you were treated less than a human.
Yeah.
And we don't talk about that. We don't grab the fact, like, my tears are for my students that I know we don't have the capacity to reach. And when they leave these schools, they're being pushed into the streets and being arrested just because the school system has failed them. Our country has continued to fail Black people, and we sweep over these conversations because we say, oh, they're too difficult and they're too hard. And, you know, we know Black people are arrested unjustly, but we just shake it off like we're supposed to be used to that. We're not supposed to be used to this. And so, you know, Dre, I would love to hear you in these last couple of minutes, like the trauma of you having to live through that and being free. And you are our hope that, you know, one day we'll be able to sit on this show and have Julius, because he deserves that freedom. So, brother, I just wanted to lend that time to you to share that.
And thank you guys for bringing up supporting Black women. That play a part in my life also. With the organization in Atlanta with bailing out Black mothers out of jail on Mother's Day, and seeing mothers and grandmothers coming out of jail, and the Black women in Atlanta led that. And, you know, it just like back in the day when I was incarcerated, my mother was my only hope, and she always been there for me. And just knowing that she lost everything, try to get a lawyer, and she was poor, fighting depression in her life. And I just believe that our community is lacking of supporting Black mothers and Black women, especially Black men. It's our duty to stand up for our Black women and Black mothers. And I wish back in the day my mother had the support that she could get from Black men's or Black fathers supporting to get me out that system, you know. And that's why I'm doing my duty right now to help Black mothers who lost their son from police killing. And I've been fighting for that for years and stuff. And seeing mothers praying and don't have the support, it just touches me. It touches, you know, a lot of Black mothers, you know, that they don't have the support that they should have fighting for justice.
Well, Tanisha, we're gonna need you to wrap us up, girl, because I ain't got that much left. I'm about to break down over here.
Yeah, this was heavy. Like, Jason, you know, you had all of us shedding a tear, whether we saw it, whether we physically had tears running down our face, or we crying on the inside as we have been for so long. Like,
yeah,
feel you know. And I think this space is important, not only to talk about these issues, but to uplift one another, because we are constantly in pain, you know. And so I want to just take this time to thank Cece, Norman, and Antoinette for everything that you guys are doing. Norman, thank you for sharing your story. Thank you guys for fighting for Julius. Thank you for all the Juliuses and the Normans in the world, because we definitely need your advocacy and your voices. So we appreciate you all so much. Family, TDRS family, share this conversation out. Like, this is real work happening here. These are real stories, and this is real trauma happening in our communities. And the only way that we can work through them is if we have these conversations, if we know our rights, and we stop this oppression and brutalization of our community. So share this out, y'all.
Yes, please.
Man, you know, we go head out today, but thank you guys so much again for joining the broadcast. Thank you, TDRS fam, for tuning in. Everybody go take some space for themselves behind this conversation. Take some space for themselves, breathe, and get back to the work as always. We love y'all. Fight, keep fighting, and protect your peace. We'll see y'all next time.
Peace and love, y'all.
Peace.